Welcome to the Qualitex podcast. Our topic today is true leadership in pharma, and our guest is Kurt In Albon, the head of global information quality at Lonza. I'm Jan Kugel, your host and the director at Qualistory, where we provide with engaging online education in private sessions, public viewings, and also on-demand video education. So uh, go to www.qualistory.com for more information. So as I mentioned, our topic today is leadership in pharma, and Kurt is our guest. Kurt has been at Lonza for 26 years now. He has been in many managerial and leadership roles, such as global head of QA, head of QC. So he managed to gather a lot of experience during his long career. And in this episode, he will share with us how he got to those leadership roles from a CV expert. And we will talk about what it takes to be a real leader in pharma, how together can anybody do it or not. So to find out all that, stick with us and let's get to it. Kurt, welcome to the Qualitox podcast. Again, love to have you here to another edition. And our topic today is leadership, and specifically we will want to get to leadership in pharma and maybe how it differentiates from other industries. But at first, let's talk. For example, for a second, at first, let's talk about you. And you are now the head of global information quality at Lonza. You're there for 26 years. Before that, you did a lot of other managerial and leadership roles like global quality assurance head, QC head, information head, a lot of heads. Okay, so
the role that I'm in right now is called head of information quality. In a previous iteration of the function, it was called head of IT quality, and it was a more classical, more restricted type of role with this strong focus on computer systems validation and computer systems quality. The role over the years has expanded a bit with additional responsibilities, different types of computerized systems, not just the classical computer systems such as an SAP ERP or so, but also systems that are much closer to the product that we manufacture. Leadership in this role is required in several respects. It's a team that I have working with me. I'm purposefully not saying working for me, but with me for the company. And as such, I need to show the typical qualities of leadership and management also. Then secondly, being in the pharmaceutical industry, as you mentioned, is an additional, in my understanding of the role, an additional stamp on the leadership diploma, if you will, which means a responsibility for health and well-being of fellow human beings. That's what the pharmaceutical industry is about. And thirdly, I think that leadership is required in order to drive the industry forward as an entity in collaboration with regulators, with the public, in coming up with new and better ways of making drugs, of easing the regulatory pressure, of making products, better products in a better way. Let's say. I think those are the three main thrusts that I would give it.
So you already mentioned that leadership roles that you have, that you lead teams. You don't say that they work for you, they work with you. And so this leads me to the next question. What, in your opinion, is the definition between management and leadership?
There's a lot of good cartoons floating about around that topic. In my personal view, a manager, if you take it at the pure meaning of the word, the classical meaning of the word, is an administrator. A manager manages time, manages workload, manages schedules. Whereas a leader does all of that, but in addition, provides a vision to the team. Okay, you have to tell people where you want to go with them, and make them want to follow you, right? And that means doing two things. It means walking in front of them and also walking behind them.
Yeah, perfectly said. So this is also the definition that I know and I'm familiar with. So it fits perfectly, like you said. So from one side, there is the management achievement of goals, and the other side you have the vision and get it and basically putting a team together that works in one direction together because they feel a purpose to do the job. So it's quite different. Do you think that every manager should be also a leader? Is there does it somehow can you be so you can be a leader without managerial roles, right? You can push your team for better results, even if you're not a manager. If your team is skulking there and they're really unmotivated, so you can be the one to say, okay, let's put it together, another push, we're almost there, right? But must also every manager also be a leader?
I think it's the other way around. You cannot be a leader without being a little bit of a manager as well, because management as such gives you structure, and it gives you the tools, or some of the tools that you need. You need a tool like performance management to be able to measure if your leadership is actually not just an empty hot air balloon, which I have seen in my experience as well, but which actually gives it substance, tangible, measurable substance. So I think a leader needs to be a little bit of a manager as well, definitely. What you get when you have a pure manager is an administrator, a department head, if you will, in the classical sense, in the military sense, maybe, that follows only the KPIs, only the processes, strictly, and is not necessarily able or wanting or necessary even to provide that vision, because in many industries, in many areas, many departments, you need administrators, you need managers with strong focus on execution, right? Not every manager has a team, let's say.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. So then you said that every manager or every leader must have a bit of managerial skills,
Mhm.
but also every manager must also have some leadership qualities. Otherwise, he's just uh, pushing paper, right?
I
Because
agree. Yes,
right,
yes. The vision needs to be seen at all levels of the organization. So also with the administrators, also with the people who are on the execution. Because if the vision is not seen, then you don't know where you want to go, right?
exactly. So do you think that the companies, when they hire people, they should look for leadership qualities, some kind of leadership qualities also in individual contributors?
Yes, I think so. Because I believe that individuals who do not have personnel responsibility, but who have subject matter responsibility, um, the more understanding of leadership that they have, the better they can be a leader in their field, not just of personnel, but they can drive a topic forward. And I believe that this is something where we you lose a lot when you have a bad work-life balance in that area, because a manager who or a leader who is then only busy managing and cannot lead the subject matter forward as well, um, stand still. The team may function, the work gets done, but there's no continuous improvement, there's no development, there's no innovation. That gets lost. So the better the balance, the more both get ahead. And if you hire an individual for a certain subject matter, if you hire, I don't know, an MES specialist in your team, that person may have great leadership abilities for a team, but they may also be a leading expert in their field. So if you allow them to develop that expertise further, and you learn from it, then you drive your own company further with that individual. And at one point, that individual may say, now I want to move into more responsibility. And then you have to be able to develop that as well. So yeah, if somebody is hired, I think looking out for leadership skills is never a bad thing.
Right. So it's a good also idea to think about each personnel also in terms of development, not only for the position that person came to, but
Exactly.
for future um, purposes, for personal development. Of course, there are some people who are also happy to sit at the same desk and do the same thing, but
Yes.
it's important to detect that. I think. For each person, right? So if you want somebody for a task which is really routine, you really need to make sure that this person doesn't get bored really quickly, or maybe he doesn't feel that he masters everything too quickly. Sometimes it's even better to take a slow learner than somebody who
Absolutely.
masters something like in 3 months and then he's bored, right?
Exactly, yes. And if you have somebody who learns so fast and is bored after 3 months, you have to be ready to give them new challenges, right? So yes, I fully agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because I see it also like that because I see it so much, especially when I work in Germany, when there is this strict hierarchy for
Mhm.
education. So in especially in pharma, there are many pharma companies where without a PhD you cannot progress much. Without a master's degree, you cannot progress much, and it holds people back. So, what is your opinion on this in terms of career progression? So, if people, let's say they're technicians, right, and but
Mhm.
they're able to do more than that because they want to, they have the
Mhm.
passion for it. Is it the same also in Switzerland where you're located? Is it familiar to you? And what do you think should be done about it?
I am familiar with those requirements. I've seen companies do that and focus on the title. It all gets a bit perspective if you think that, for example, in Switzerland, doctor is not a protected title. I can write doctor in front of my name if, as long as I don't write Doctor Med or something, nobody can contest that. So titles are relative. We often, when we hire, we put the requirement for a Master of Science or a bachelor degree or a PhD, as you say. We put that on the job requisition, and it makes people filter. It makes the HR people, the recruiters, it makes them filter for you. In my experience, and this has happened when I hired internally and when I hired externally. Uh, I tend not to look at the title, or maybe I look at the title last because I'm more interested in the passion of the person. I'll tell you that three of the strongest people in my team that I've hired have no PhD. They have a bachelor's degree, and in two cases, not even a bachelor's degree in the area that I was hiring for. Right, and I picked those people because of their passion, the desire to join the group, the desire to work in that area. That was it was palatable during the interview. You could really see these people had fire in their heart, and that is something that I look for. And the difficult thing, or the important thing also, is to distinguish that from a blaze that dies after the interview, and really be able to say, okay, yes, this is a person that has this as a character trait. There's passion, there is engagement, there is the will to move beyond their own abilities. That's what is much more important in my view and much more valuable than titles. Don't get me wrong, a PhD with passion is not something that is impossible, right? But it shouldn't be just one or the other. Okay, it's really the combination, the mix that makes the whole thing.
Exactly. So I love it how how you choose the personnel according to their passion. So would you say this is one of the traits that make you a good leader? So you not only can kindle a passion in someone to achieve goals, but you can also detect it. Uh,
I like to think so. I've made my hiring mistakes like anybody else. Okay, so I'm not far from being without fault, but I do think that um, the ability to be able to detect such people 4 out of 5 times has helped me become a better leader. Yes, I
mhm,
would say so.
yeah. Okay. And what do you think is the situation in pharma in terms of good leadership? So, what is the percentage? So, in pharma, there is a lot of hierarchy, a
Mhm.
lot of hierarchy. Huge organizations usually. Lonza is also a really big company. So, there are for sure a lot of managers, but
Mhm.
so even if we don't talk about Lonza, right? Because you order, but you had a lot. You deal as a CMO. You deal with a lot of other companies. You meet a lot of managers and a lot of people. So, in general, in pharma, what do you think is the percentage of really good leaders? Also,
Of good leaders versus bad leaders, you mean?
yeah, or just purely managers or bad versus. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Can you be a good leader? So you can be an evil leader, maybe lead them, but can you be a bad leader if you really? So this is a maybe a philosophical question. So
No. It's a good question actually. The percentage is difficult to pin down, I would say, but I have seen my share of the Darth Vaders of the organizations, if you will. um, there are people that I have met in the past that are less suitable for leadership um, because of let's say the I mentioned earlier the military mindset in Switzerland 25, 30 years ago. It was that when you had a high rank in the military, and in Switzerland you do compulsory service, you join the military when you're 20, you do your boot camp and your annual service, um, and then a lot of people choose an officer's career and before they drop out of the service, and people with an officer's degree were were searched for by business, by the companies, because they said if somebody is a, I don't know, is a colonel or a first lieutenant or something like that, they are automatically good leaders, which is a mistake because not all of them were. Some in Switzerland, you could also be forced into an officer's career because if the military didn't have enough officers, they could say, "Yeah, you have to do that." So imagine somebody like that joining a company and say, and the HR manager saying, "Oh, you're a lieutenant in the army. I'm sure you're a good leader, so we'll give you this department," and then everything goes to hell. So um, there are still a couple of dinosaurs around. I do think that overall the percentage of capable leadership is going up because a lot of people are learning from a lot of resources that are around these days. There are programs such as yours, which really are inspiring and can also help people understand aspects of this topic. So I do think the percentage is going up. It's a slow process. You still have a lot of managers, a lot of pure administrators who are happy to push paper and so on. But I believe that number is going down.
okay, that's good to hear. So
I'm
because
an
we,
optimist too.
yeah, I'm sure of that. I see that also from our communication, and I must say that I've seen throughout my career also different types of people. And as you mentioned, you gave this military um, example, right? So people who are leaders there, um, they people think they can be also good leaders in other position. So there is a theory, philosophy of leadership, which is called situational leadership, which basically says there are different types of people, and each type of people can be a leader, but in different situations. So a good example for it is like Churchill, right? So he was the president during the World War II. He was a powerful leader. He was headstrong, but as soon as the war was over, he was kicked out because it is just in time of peace. he cannot be a good leader, because in time of peace you need a different person. So I think it's also the same for pharma, and in military. You have commands, right? You need to command somebody to do something; they must obey. But in the uh, in the world of business, you need to have a EQ, right? So you need
Right.
emotional intelligence. You need to not to command people, but to use different methods to bring them aboard. So it's completely different.
That is absolutely correct. I think that Winston Churchill was probably one of the most inspiring leaders, or one of the most inspiring leaders in history. I like to use some of the quotes from him. But as a situational leader, he was very singular. He was focused. His capabilities, his abilities were focused on one type of leadership, that was military leadership, strategic leadership. In situational leadership, I believe that every leader, every manager in a company, be it pharma, telecom, oil, gas, banking, whatnot, needs to be able to apply the different facets of situational leadership to the situation that they're in. There are moments when you have to be a dictator as a leader of a team, because if there's an emergency and everybody stands around with big eyes and is shell shocked from what has happened, you need to take charge, and you need to step in and maybe take some uncomfortable decisions, some decisions that you would normally not take in that situation. So this is something I think that people can be taught. They can learn that. This is not something you're born with. This is really something that you can learn either from good teaching, good mentorship from another manager or leader, or from experience. If you learn it from experience, it's a tough one, right? Because you might be the one standing there with the eyes like a deer in the headlights, and then take charge. So, and you have to understand that in that situation, as a leader, you may be taking the wrong decision, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly normal. But you do take a decision, which is better than not taking any decision, even if it's the wrong one.
Exactly. So you think that from your perspective in business, a leader should be able to step in into any type of shoes. And but what is your thoughts about the different types? So right now we have so many personality tests, and there are companies that come and assess people, and they put them again. So I'm not sure if it's if. So a lot of companies do it. They bring external companies to assess the personnel in order to see how they can develop them. But I'm not sure really how it is good to put additional boxes on people: extrovert, introvert, red,
No,
blue. You put colors to them. Oh, you're red, you're assertive, you are then fit to leadership. Or somebody that is like analytical, then not. So this is something that maybe put some even grudge into people ideas. So I'm also not sure how true those tests are. For example, I don't know if you do such tests and if you're familiar with them.
I am familiar with this type of exercise. I've gone through it myself. I've been put in boxes. Um, well, I have to say, after these exercises and after seeing them applied, I still wonder what the objective is. My view is that human beings are much more complex than that. You can see a major trait of someone if someone is an extrovert person, okay, for example, and they are assertive and then they appear to be self-confident to the outside. In such a test, in the box, they would be put squarely in the red box with the big thumbs up and so on. What is not visible is that this person is only assertive in this situation where they feel comfortable, but as soon as they're in an uncomfortable situation, they may be withdrawing into a corner. And when you have a situation and you rely on such a red box person, only to find out that they're not years after the exercise is done and you have put them in a leadership position, that can be problematic. So I'm not a strong believer in those exercises. I think they probably have their use, not pushing them aside completely, but I think the use is limited and should be limited to the situations where they were really applicable. They're not always applicable everywhere in everyday life.
That's what I think. And what's interesting about it that sometimes, so of course, those tests are not perfect. People can choose because we are all intelligent people. So if you are a manager, you probably would choose the boxes that you expect your bosses for you to choose in such
Right.
situations. So but it doesn't mean that you are assertive enough or you really do it. And secondly, what I've also noticed in such tests, because it's so interesting when you give this test to one of your colleagues to do it, and they get completely a different view of you. And this is an exercise that we did with some of my colleagues, and it's amazing how different one perceives himself, herself, from what the colleagues see.
Exactly.
And one also need to consider it, right? So from your perspective, it doesn't matter where you land, you still can learn leadership. So would you say, so we have, right, so we have the introverts, we have the extroverts. So from your perspective, anyone can grow into this role?
In my experience, people grow with the challenge you give them. I'll give you my personal example of myself, because I never wanted to be a leader. I never wanted to be a manager. I was a system developer, and I was a happy system developer. And then I was an IT CSV guy, and I was a happy IT CSV guy. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, my line manager puts a guy there and says, "This guy's now reporting to you." I was terrified. And then, I mean, this is a human being. This is not a computer. I'm an IT guy, so this is not a computer. What am I going to do with that person, right? So, but he was very understanding, and he was very kind to me, having had some leadership experience himself. So that was my entrance into the game, and I never thought that this would be one of the things that I really love doing before I actually learned doing it or had to learn it the hard way. I was assigned more people than at one point a little bit later, and one person walked up to me and said, "I think you're the wrong manager for us." I was like taken aback when
Okay.
you just started with this team, and one of the first things you hear is, "You're the wrong guy. You're the wrong manager for us." And
Ouch.
he was very, yeah, it hurt. He was very skeptical, and I for a while I was struggling with that really, but then at one point I started to turn it around, and I started something that I call the wrong manager's diary. And this is what you see the excerpts of on LinkedIn when I post these quotes or
Right. So I wanted to ask that, do you
these
just put it on LinkedIn, you note it, or you actually have a diary which you lead and you read it and then you have insights from it, which you
I have
learn?
I have a document, if you will. You might call it a diary. It has about 300, 350 aphorisms or quotes from everyday life, or things that I think things that I wrote down as I'm sitting in a meeting, and all of a sudden I realize something very basic, something that is happening over and over again. I say, okay, all right, okay. So I write it down, and maybe I put it in that diary, maybe I discard it, but more often than not, it lands in there, and it leads a lonely life until I bring it back out, put it in handwriting, take a picture of it, and then put it on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah, so I find it really great. So I always sense that because at first I thought, okay, maybe it quotes that you put from someone, but then I've seen how special and how unique they are and how philosophical they are. So then I said, oh, okay, it's 100% you. So also I took also as I mentioned before, I took some screenshot from it. So maybe we can look at some of them. Maybe it would interest also the listeners or the viewers. So and maybe you can go through some of them. Maybe you can explain your way of thoughts there. So we have one, for example: true leadership is 1% inspiration and 99% transpiration.
Yes, I think I paraphrased that a little bit from someone famous, and I do believe that the original quote is ascribed to Mr. Albert Einstein. Genius is 1%, inspiration and 99% transpiration. And I adapted that to leadership because I think that comes a little bit from the way I got into leadership. I was not brought into the company to be a leader. I was the one I was trying the least of all my friends and colleagues in the company to actually have a career. I stumbled up the ladder, as they say, and I found out that becoming a leader is hard work. It is really, and you burn your fingers over and over again. You learn the hard, the painful way a lot, especially if you make as many mistakes as I made. But I think it helps. I really think that it helps me become a better leader because I felt the pain myself. Right? I've been in the situation. I've been kicked. So I know how it feels to kick. That's why I don't do it or something like that. So it is hard work, and then you transpire, of course. So, but that one little bit of inspiration also needs to be
Right. So it's interesting that you said that you never wanted at first to be a leader or a manager. So do you think it's better for people not to strive for it and just to do their job and wait for it to happen because then or it always depends on who your manager is, if he's
there.
also a leader, if he's a mentor, if he sees it in you. So what do you think, what is the better way to try to cloth your way to leadership if you think you deserve it, or you should
Mhm.
just do your work well until somebody notices
Mhm.
you?
I think if you think you deserve it, then you're already on the wrong path, and you think you're entitled to it. And I don't think anyone is entitled to leadership. You have to want it, but um, and I know this is maybe a little bit counter to the tough business world sometimes. Don't use your elbows too much. There's a couple of quotes in that diary that I haven't posted yet, or I might not, which deal with the discrepancy between advancing and being thrown back down the ladder. Because the bigger, as they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And if you really try too hard, you will fall hard as well. You might not fall. I've had the great privilege and the great luck also to have some really inspiring leaders who were my direct managers or line managers, if you will, and learning from them to really improve myself. I learned some tricks, some things, and some of the quotes in the diary are from them. They are attributed to them. So I try not to steal too much without quoting properly. But if I think in my understanding, the best leaders are the ones who don't care about the privilege, but they care about the fun of doing it. Because leadership is not necessarily being at the top of a hierarchy, being the top dog, but also the privilege of leading other people. It's a service, right? So I think
Right.
that's an important aspect.
Right. Because as a leader, you impact people's life, right? So you
Exactly.
can fire them, you can hire them, you can change the whole course of their life at the end. And
It's a huge responsibility. Yes, that needs to be clear to any person in a leadership position.
right.
Yeah.
So another quote: "I don't have the resource, the wine of the incept manager."
Yes. This is something that I heard a lot, and you hear that in I think in every company that somebody gets asked to do something and they say, "Oh, I don't have the resource to do that. I don't have the manpower. I don't have the money. I don't have the time." Um, if you're not able to fight for those things, whether you get them or not is a different matter. But you have to stand up in front of your boss, manager, leader, whatever, and say, "Look, this is something that I'm asked to do. This is something that I think we should do. We must do it. Here's why." You give them a business case if needed, and if the answer to your request is no, you say, okay, thank you for that answer. We'll talk about it again at our next one-to-one. Thank you, goodbye. That's how I sometimes got my positions for my team. When you have a hiring stop in the company and you know I need headcount, I need somebody to take care of that. I go to my boss and my boss tells me, no chance. It's a hiring freeze, right? I say, okay, let's talk about it again next week. No, let's not. So he or she will say, no, let's not talk about it because it's still going to be hiring freeze. I said, no, I'll still talk about it. So I'm becoming a pain in the neck to that person. I'm getting on their nerves until they give me what I need. And then it is my job to put it to use, to make actually not just have a big team, but also do the work and advance the topic. That's why I said I have no resource is a whine. It's a sentence that you can say, but it doesn't excuse your inability to get the resource.
Right. So either get the resource or find the smart way around it
Exactly.
with
Yeah.
an alternative. But it's
Exactly.
also one thing that I think you said, which is also interesting. You become, well, you choose when to become a pain in the neck, and it's something that reminded me. I don't know if you are familiar with Tim Ferriss. So he's an author, best-selling author in the USA. And one thing that he said that was interesting is be difficult when it counts.
Yes. Yes. I think that sums it up. He says it much more beautifully than I can. Yeah, absolutely. Be difficult when it counts. Yeah. Be a pain in the neck when you have to be. That's great. I really like that.
Exactly. So you don't want to be always difficult because people will hate you. You need to choose
Mhm.
your moments. And I remember something also, a quote. It's also from a book, okay? Dictonomy of Leadership.
Mhm.
Okay, it's an amazing book written by an ex special forces, and he said when he was a commander of his unit, he when he asked something, he
Mhm.
always got it. Why? Because his managers, or not managers, his commanders knew that if he asks for something, it means he really needs it. So he's not going
Mhm.
around like, sorry for the word, like bitching around. Oh, I need this. Oh, my tent is leaking, or or my shoes are torn. Right. So he only comes when it's important, and
Mhm.
this is, I think, also something that one can connect. Right. So you should choose when to be difficult,
Mhm.
and by doing that, the people whom you address, your bosses, your commanders, they will know, okay, if you come, it's serious. They should drop everything and help you.
Absolutely. It hits it to the same vein as what you said earlier. Absolutely. Pick your battles. Don't just be fighting everywhere, but really pick your battles where it counts, where be difficult when it counts. Go ask for it when it's necessary. If you ask all the time, it's like the boy who cried wolf, right?
Exactly, exactly. And another one of your quotes, you about a week ago, you had a full list, and one of them was quite interesting. It's be yourself all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
A great leader is himself. He's true to himself. He is not fake, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
what you mean, right? So you are
Yes.
always the same when you're talking with your bosses. You're always the same when you're talking with your colleagues. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't try to hide your thoughts, or say something just to appease somebody if you don't really think it.
Right. What I think is we're all different people and we have different ways of expressing ourselves. And if we start being fake with one person and honest with another, it is going to show. Be yourself at any time means to me, if I have to have, and I'll be the first to admit, I have a rough way of expressing myself sometimes. I drop the F bomb and everything in a normal conversation, and people will look at me like that, and some people will not look at me like that because they're used to me. But I do that whether I speak to my manager's manager, I would whether I speak to a CEO or whether I speak to my friends or colleagues in the team. Um, because if I'm if I'm not myself, they will notice that. And that will be a big letdown in terms of trust. And people trust you when they know what they can expect from you, right? And if you're fake, if you're not yourself, if you try to play a role, you will deliver different results to the same request to different people, and that will show, and you will lose that confidence from people in you.
Right. So those things basically be true to yourself and
Mhm.
be assertive or pain in the neck when needed.
Mhm.
Did you always have those qualities or you develop them with time? Because I think those qualities are difficult. I think those qualities are really important for a manager and a leader because only by that way his team will trust the person to to watch their back,
Mhm.
and the people will come to you and your managers you will trust you. So is it something that it's part of you, or you also learned it the hard way and you needed to learn and from mentors and so on?
I think that a lot of people have that an inbred trait. That they have that trait in their character. They are confident, assertive, honest, and straight arrows, if you will. The confidence, the assertiveness. This is something that I had to learn. I was a different person before I became a leader. I had to learn a lot of those qualities. I had to learn the also to carry the emotional weight of sometimes having to tell somebody bad news. I had to learn to bear this emotional difficulty when becoming a leader. So it wasn't always very easy. Um, but as I said, a lot of people have that in their character. They understand it, and those. I'm not saying they have it easier, but they don't need to learn that from the ground up. They have it. I envy them sometimes.
So you mean every person has it in himself? He just need the courage or the encouragement to use it, right?
Mhm.
Because I
Yeah.
think many of us, I think, are a bit different between friends. As you said, we
Mhm.
use different language, which is less business-like when we're
Yeah,
with friends,
maybe.
right? And some people don't. And I think you're more straightforward with it because you're not afraid to express yourself, and which is also great.
Mhm.
And some people probably do. And so, but you think everybody has it? He just needs to account to it. And one thing that I love, one quote is, in order to be successful, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable,
That's a good quote. Yeah,
right?
you have to be able to take the bad one with the good one. Absolutely. Yeah,
So
it's
you
not
need
always sunny flying.
exactly. So you need to embrace it. You need to embrace the psychology because as people we work on a primate brain. We're afraid of things that cannot really hurt us, right? And that's why we sometimes pull back. But if
Exactly. Yeah.
you again choose your battles and you take it out and you learn to be, it's the same with as I when I speak a lot with people who ask me, okay, you started a podcast, I also want to do it, but I'm afraid. So people would say that they are afraid to post their notes like you do. And at
Mhm.
first there is this fear the first time you post the first post on LinkedIn or on social media,
Mhm.
and the first time you click it you're afraid what will happen, but after a
Mhm.
while you just get used to it, and it's just like a walk in a breeze. So it's okay,
Mhm.
another post, another video, cool, okay.
And some of the posts that I've done are provocative. Yeah, you notice that I go at consultants a lot.
For
Um,
good reason, I think
I
sometimes.
go I go with HR departments. Yeah, I go with HR departments. I have a go with a lot of people, but I am also not afraid to take back. So if somebody responds to me and says in a factual way, look, I think you're wrong, then I'm open for discussion and I'm willing to engage in that discussion too.
Right, right.
But take me as I am, and if I use rough language in one of those posts, that's because I think at the time of writing That's how it has to
You
be.
had the feeling, right? So that's how you
Exactly.
express, that's how with words you express the situations, right? So, for
Correct.
example, here's an interesting quote of you. It's not enough to make an ass of yourself. You have to make an ass of yourself in front of your CEO to be real badass. So I
Yes.
think people who are stand in front of your CEO, they're probably in a leadership position, executives,
Hmm.
and they also have a way. So this is probably an example that you thought about somebody who is not a good leader.
No, absolutely. That was one of my former line managers who actually made an ass of himself in front of our CEO at the time. It was a long time ago. And people were watching and were hiding their faces and thinking, oh my God, he should just shut up. He should just not go on. And he kept going. So he said he was a real badass.
So I think this is one of the things was what you said. You should choose your battles and know,
Hmm.
right? So sometimes,
Exactly.
right, you should be assertive, but sometimes you do need to shut up, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about your tips. If somebody wants to become a better leader, so somebody is not a manager, he wants to become, or somebody is a manager, but he feels that it's overwhelming. So, what are your tips? Is it books? Is it mentorship? Should they, whatever?
I think mentorship is always a good thing. That's something for somebody who wants to stay in the role, who wants to move forward. Mentorship is a good thing. One thing that I've also learned is a good thing is to be actually ready to take a step back. I have a good friend who worked at a large electronics company in Silicon Valley, the one with the little fruit logo on the devices, and he was a department manager for a while. He's actually one of the brightest computer system programmers and computer systems developers that I know. Um, really, really fantastic. And they made him department head. And after a year and a half, 2 years, he said, "You know what? Nah, not for me. I'm going to step back into the ranks and do what I love doing." So if it's something that you love doing, you will find a way to advance. But if you find out it's not really what you love, then it's time to look beyond that and maybe move on.
Right. So what you're saying, if you are in a leadership position, but you find it not suiting and too difficult because you don't know, you don't enjoy it, the
Hmm.
task, you don't enjoy the challenge, so
Yeah.
you better withdraw. And for the people who didn't have the opportunity, so they won't. So, but at first, okay, I don't know if you want to address it because you said that if somebody really strives to it, maybe it's not a good idea because he shouldn't feel entitled.
That's right. I think that if you have the feeling like you you may want to be in a privileged position because you deserve being there. That may not be true. It's something worth analyzing. It may also be true, right? But it's really a point where you have to ask yourself these questions. And I think in some cases the question will be, you know what? No, probably better not. And in a few cases the question will be, it's just try a little harder and you'll get there.
Mhm. Okay. So just I want to dig a bit into it, okay? Because I think many people will be quite interested in it, right? So from one, because at first you said everybody the uh, pos- has the ability to become a manager. He has the option for sorry, a leader. Everybody has it in him, but he needs to work on it, right? But on the other side, you say that not everybody still is fit for it, especially if they think they really deserve it. So where is the balance here to know? Okay, I should learn a bit about leadership from books or whatever.
Okay, I think that the balance is where you what do you see in leadership? What is leadership for you? What is that role for you if you really want it? Is it something you want because you think it's fun to work with people? It's fun to drive forward. It's fun to be innovative and to do something new, or is it you want to be a leader because you can direct people? And I think the former is the collegial type of leadership, and the latter is the more dictatorial. I'm going to call it that. It has negative connotations, but I'm going to call it that for a second. I think that true leadership is always collegial. When I hire someone, I tell them I'm not your boss. I'm your coworker with extended responsibilities. I learned that from a very great manager himself, from a very great leader, and this is how I see my people and the people I work with. I'm a primus inter pares, as they say. I'm one of you. I just have a bit more work to do than you.
That's
I
right.
think it's important to understand what you want with the leadership, right? If you just see it as a tool to direct people, then it's the wrong choice.
Right. So, from my perspective, you should strive to be a leader if you think you can make a change for the better. I think it's the only reason for a person to strive for it, right? So to make
Yes,
a change for the better and help the organization progress because you think that you have the ideas and
exactly.
the ability to do it, right? So this should be your only goal. Make a difference and make improvement. So this is should be the only agenda here, and not okay, I want to boss somebody around.
Mm-hmm. And very important, have fun.
Exactly. And but I think it's true about everything that you do. And as you said, if somebody like your friend from the Apple company uh, with the
Yeah,
fruit logo, who said, "Okay, I don't want it. I don't have fun." So you should find what makes you what makes you happy and just stick to it.
exactly.
It's never too late to change.
Very true.
Perfect, perfect, Kurt. So thank you very much for this great discussion. It's a true
My
honor to
pleasure.
have you on the show, and I hope to see you again at some time to discuss other topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, and I wish you great success.
Thank you for tuning in and listening or watching to this episode of the Qualitox podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe and share it with your colleagues. Stay compliant and see you in the next one.